There are a lot of anti-Candida diets out there, and a lot of them are either wrong or just way too strict. So let's get to the facts about what you really need to do to treat Candida. Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Wangen, the founder and medical director of the IBS Treatment Center. Since 2005, we have treated literally thousands of cases of Candida overgrowth, and I'd like to share with you what we've learned. Candida thrive on sugars and carbs. And because of this, when it comes to successfully treating a Candida overgrowth in the gut, we must change the diet and stop feeding the Candida in order to successfully treat Candida. Now, there are what I consider to be 3 phases or 3 steps to the Candida diet. And I think many people actually end up overdoing it and jump to the 3rd phase, but most people probably only need to employ the 1st phase of the diet. And that's saying something because I tend to be pretty strict when it comes to asking people to change diets, but I do see a lot of times it gets overdone a bit in the Candida world. Now, please note, we always use a strong antifungal agent along with the anti-Candida diet when we treat Candida, because in my experience, either of those alone, just the diet or just the antifungal, is nowhere near adequate for successfully treating Candida, especially for the long term. Now, what are the 3 phases of the Candida diet? Phase 1. Well, phase 1 of the anti-Candida diet is the most critical. And what this really boils down to is that you must remove all sugars and sweets from your diet. And it doesn't matter how organic it is or how natural it is, it's still going to be a problem. So this includes things like honey and agave and sweet fruits, certainly all dried fruit, because dried fruit is just highly concentrated fruit sugar, even though it's natural, right? It includes corn syrup and cane sugar and desserts, like anything that's a dessert, right? Anything that tastes sweet. Fruit juices, smoothies, right, that are sweet. Things like even xylitol, erythritol, just anything, like I said, that tastes sweet, you've got to avoid it because then it's going to be a problem. Now, doing this all by itself might not make a huge difference, although it will probably help. And doing it while also taking a really good antifungal, like I said, will almost definitely help, but you are likely to experience a Candida die-off reaction. So be aware of that and be sure to watch my video on that particular topic because it's a huge part of the Candida treatment and being successful with it. Now, the only sweet-tasting things that are acceptable are stevia. And I'm talking about straight stevia, not one of these stevia products on the market where they've mixed it with other things, some sweetener that's not acceptable. You can't use those. You got to find straight stevia. And another one is monk fruit. It's kind of gaining a little bit of popularity, but that one would be acceptable. You can find that concentrated too. Because neither of those is actually a true sweetener or sugar. They just taste sweet, but they have, like, for example, they have 0 impact on your blood sugar. So they're not actually sugars. They just trigger the sensation on your tongue of sweetness. All right. Well, that's a lot of things to avoid, right, that I just mentioned. That's a ton of stuff, especially in this day and age when people eat a lot of sweet things. I mean, everything's sweetened, right? People are sweetening lattes and ketchup sweetened, for goodness sakes, and barbecue sauce, and you name it. There's a ton of stuff that's sweetened out there when you stop to think about it, and a lot of you are going to go, oh my gosh. You start reading ingredients and realizing, oh, whoa, there's sugar in a ton of stuff. But it's nothing like phases 2 or 3 of this anti-Candida diet, which get a lot more extreme. Now, by the way, one thing I neglected to mention up to this point is alcohol. You cannot have alcohol on an anti-Candida diet because alcohol is basically a sugar and it definitely feeds into a Candida overgrowth. And beer and wine are the worst, but hard alcohol is still a problem. Now, this is what I find is the diet that will help most people to adequately treat Candida. And it's not often that we have to get more extreme with the diet than this, but occasionally we do. So sometimes we do. So I'm going to talk about what the next two levels are, phases. Now here's phase 2. If phase 1 is not getting the job done, then we move on to phase 2. And phase 2 is where you have to get into avoiding other starchy foods and other refined carbs that aren't necessarily, the sugar sweetener stuff, but they're definitely carbs. And this includes stuff like potato chips and popcorn and all this processed food out there and junk foods and the like, right? There's a lot of starch, a lot of carbs in the typical, certainly American diet. And these can be problematic, especially if you're addicted to potato chips like I am, right? Or something like that. And it includes like your typical breads, that kind of thing, right? Because they're refined. It's a refined food. Now, of course, there are more wholer grain breads that might be a little better, and you can draw that line in different places with that. But you get the idea. There's a lot of starchy carbohydrate food out there. And that, for some people, is a level that they need to go to on an anti-candida diet that will make a big difference in how they feel. All right, phase 3. So what is phase 3? Well, it sounds like I already cut out everything, right? Well, not quite. Let's talk about what phase 3 is. Now, because that is the ultimate in dietary restriction and strictness. And it doesn't allow literally any kind of carbohydrates, any starches, unless maybe they come from vegetables. And some people even cut those out, which I think is really way too extreme. But this diet generally avoids all grains, right? Potatoes, rice, that kind of stuff, you name it, those are out. So that means no wheat, no gluten, no corn, no oats, right? No gluten-free bread, stuff like that. Only real whole food like vegetables, meats, beans, eggs. And some people have problems with beans. And I don't think it's not because of starches, because they're not breaking them down well yet. And actually, some people still have problems with lots of food in general. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to digest all of these real well yet until your gut is cleaned up and the candida is taken care of. And then that digestion of the foods that will be okay is going to come around. You're going to be able to break those down, but you might not even be able to break down acceptable foods really well yet, because they're, especially like fatty meats, that kind of thing, because they're harder to break down, and raw foods, harder to break down. So don't confuse that with the fact that you're doing the right thing to treat the candida, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to digest everything else real well yet. That can take time. So do your best to maybe cooked veggies are going to be better than raws, so, with regard to vegetables. Meats that are not fatty, maybe you're going to have to really, cut them up really good, that kind of thing. After your digestion heals and improves, then you're going to be able to break a lot of that stuff down better. Now, some other little miscellaneous stuff that you'll hear about. For example, I never take people off of peanut butter. And I do have them eat unsweetened peanut butter, because peanut butter is another place where we find lots of sugar. So you have to be careful about that. But you see a lot of extreme diets that might take you off of peanut butter because there could be fungus from the peanuts in the peanut butter. And that's possible, but I don't think it's likely to change the outcome of your treatment program. That's very rare. I also don't have people avoid things like carrots or squash. Yeah, do they have some kind of carb, natural sugar content in them? Yes, but only a tiny amount. And I've never found it to be enough to worry about, unless you're somebody who's just juicing the heck out of tons of carrots or something like that. That might be a problem. But otherwise, I would say don't worry about it. Now, a lot of the anti-candida diets out there are even more extreme than this. And I usually find that completely unnecessary. In fact, I can't think of if there's ever been a case where I've gotten any more extreme than just cutting out grains, all the grains. And I'm not afraid to tell people to not eat things. So for me to say, go ahead and eat it is saying something. And a lot of my patients will probably go, yeah, that's probably true. So don't worry. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about a lot of things that some of these candida diets out there on the internet will tell you to avoid. It gets really super strict. And I think unnecessarily so in those cases. But like we said, right, this phase 3 is basically a no-carb diet, or maybe a paleo diet, or you've heard this is kind of popular out there these days, these vegetable and meat-based diets, and that's basically what it is. So if you've been struggling with treating Candida, it can be done, but if you need help, give us a call at the IBS Treatment Center, because we work with people all over the U.S. and in many other countries, and we'd love to work with you too. And I'm sure that we can help you get over the hump or have success, or figure out what other pieces in the puzzle might be missing that might be explaining why you're not getting the results that you should be out of treating Candida. Well, thank you very much for joining me here. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.